We call ourselves the performance treadmill company. And it really was when we started out the company, I had another business that had sold all kinds of other equipment, and we did a lot of medical, we did a lot of industrial work, but all in the fitness business. And the one problem I ran into is it didn't matter what you sold to anybody, treadmills just didn't hold up. And if any of you have had gyms in the past, one of the things people treat is a treadmill is it's just something that wears out. And we really looked at it, and our inspiration really came is if people wanted to really use the product, if they really had a full intention of actually doing something on it, not just having people jog on it at 2.5 or walk at 2.5 miles an hour at a Planet Fitness, but you really wanted people to be able to do all kinds of stuff on it, like we're showing in here, is at that point you had to build it totally different. And so that was our goal. When we started the company, it was, why can't you build a treadmill that holds up? And then as we started getting into it and I started developing the products, we started running into, basically it was just one of the solutions was the way everybody did it wasn't right, because what everybody runs into, and this was the motivation for what started us, is if you had somebody come in and get onto one of your selectorized weight machines at a gym and put it on 200 pounds and press out the bench press and let it go and let it slam on the plate, slam down, and they did it about 5 times, you'd ask them to leave the gym. You'd tell them to get out. Take a 200-pound person, put them on a treadmill, and have them start to jog on the thing, and that same 200 pounds is coming down 5 times a second. And you don't ask them to leave the gym. You ask them to work out a little longer, push it a little harder, go a little further. And once you start realizing it's that pounding, it's that intermittent load that creates a huge problem for a treadmill that a bike doesn't have, that other aerobic equipment doesn't have. And as we started dealing with more and more customers, treadmills are just totally different than any other piece of equipment. To me, it's a really separate category. And that's where I started to meet Bo, and I started meeting other people. Our very first project we did in the performance treadmills, in the high performance treadmills, was in Guangzhou, China for their Olympic team about 4 years before they got their Olympics. And so they wanted to start doing some of the performance training, and they were having problems with what they were buying out of Europe holding up. And they had seen us in our regular stuff and then asked us if we could get into the high performance stuff. And that's what got us started with it. By getting into that, we realized that we were starting to see so many more things with treadmills. And so just things like Alex Lopez's, what he was doing with autism, seeing what Bo was doing. Bo was this guy up in Raton, New Mexico. I mean, it was we had to send it to FedExes to the Texaco station so they could get a FedEx there, and so with it. But we were just happening to go up. I was heading up skiing, stopped by at Bo's place, and he was just doing more with the treadmill than I had seen anybody else doing. And that's when instead of going skiing, I spent 3 days in Raton, and just sitting there watching what Bo was doing and listening to what he was doing and seeing what he was doing. We were already into performance products and doing stuff with people all over. But when we started seeing and then started hearing his ideas on what he was doing with the machines, we started then really tailoring the machine. At the same time, we started getting all these commissions. Because we built such a different product in terms of even our smaller standard gym treadmill. We call it we have to watch it, we say our little machine, and people, because it's just a monster compared to any other gym treadmill you'd see. And our original 3 are still in Diamond Head. They're 20-something years old. They're still running at a resort hotel. And that was our very first ones. We really didn't know what we were doing. And but in terms of where we are today, because what happened is once they started seeing that and they started seeing their little machines, people started going, well, if you can make that, can you make this? And I just love making stuff. And we love engineering things, and we're a really good engineering company. Dario came along, they really help us out. We're a really bad marketing company. We love making stuff, we love engineering stuff and working, and we'll sit and talk when called in on the phone, and hey, that's another guy, they sound interesting, so I get it from my sales guy and we start talking. That's just how it all kind of works. It's the relationships like that get you involved, and when you're making something that's gonna last that long, or you start working with researchers that are really pushing cutting edge things, and they have a limitation, especially now in the robotics. That's a big deal for us because we really got into that. And we start integrating our machines with the different robots. All that stuff is really kind of neat, and it's fun, and it's interesting. But what it does do is it turned us into a very unusual company in that we have a production side and we have a custom side. And that gives us a huge advantage when we're going out talking with the military, when we're talking with different facilities, because we can offer a production component, but we then, because of everything we do working with these researchers and working with these engineering departments on their project, we start learning things about it that go into our standard production team. And not to overstate it, because it sounds a little over, but it's the same as you start doing the business research. It's the same thing that comes out of Mercedes, Ferrari, these kind of companies that have a racing division. You know, Honda put in a racing division. Part of it is it allows you to push the limits and figure out what you're doing. It's the same kind of thing. We don't have a picture of it in here, but they'll see this machine and say, well, what's the fastest machine you've made? You know, we go, well, our fastest one we've done runs 203 miles an hour. And do you need a 200-mile-an-hour treadmill? You know, but right off the bat, people are like, well, that's how our 30-mile-an-hour treadmill holds up so well. And once you've had to build one that can accelerate to 200 miles an hour in 6 seconds and decelerate in 6 seconds, it's pretty easy to figure out how to stop these and control these and make these run. And so it really filters into everything we do. So if anybody's out there and you're training or you know something out there, it is something to ask us about. You know, we do some modifications, we do things along our machines, but what's really kind of happened with us as we've gone on from that thing, it's also been an opportunity to find out what everybody's doing. When we got to talk to Donnie and hear what his concerns were for guys that were being deployed, that physically weren't fast enough to keep themselves safe, you know, that just changes your whole attitude about what you're building. And when we sent the machine out to your base, there's a pride about being associated with it, but that goes away real quick when you start hearing the real stories with it. When you start hearing what can happen, we've got James, that was the long snapper for the New England Patriots for the longest time. He had a son that had Asperger's. And when his son started training on it, and he started seeing dramatic changes in what his son's behavior was, and how quickly it corrected in a way his 13-year-old son had never corrected before, you're saying, well, how do I then find other people to talk to about this and see what they're seeing? And you know, and all of a sudden, because our machines last so long, it's exactly what Bo was saying. It becomes a relationship thing. You're going to have your machine for a long time. You're going to call us. We take care of our own products. About 6-7 years ago, we just shut down our dealer network because we found that people weren't taking care of our products the way we wanted them taken care of. And that if we could call you, the gym owners, the people that have the machine, if we can call you guys and you guys can call us, you're going to get the people who actually design them and work on them. Our service guys are trained on this when they get a call. We've had people get rid of their machines because they never called us. They said, well, it's making a squeaking noise. They called up an independent service company, somebody that sells something. They throw them with an $800-900 bill, and they call us, you know, out of frustration. Hey, we bought this thing, and you said it was going to hold up. I said, well, what's your problem? You know, and then you find out they got a drive belt that's loose. There's a couple little things that are consumable. We talk them through it, we coach them through it, or we get somebody in there that we've talked to who knows how to take care of it. And what do you know? For $20 later, they're running. Because we know our stuff, and we build differently. Under the hood on every one of these, one of the things that really got us started into the performance side is if you look under the hood of any treadmill, they're all exactly the same. Meaning there's a motor, there's a belt running from that motor to a front roller, and that front roller then drives you along. And remember the pounding problem I was telling you about. When you have that pounding problem of that intermittent load, constantly hitting with that 200 pounds, you've got to do something about that. So what most companies do is they just, because now everything's coming out of when it really comes to treadmills, it's all coming out of Asia. It's very easy to ship a little sensor that tries to monitor that belt speed and keeps trying to adjust for it. But the problem is he doesn't adjust for it until it sees a reason to adjust for it. And so now in the small machines, that's not a big deal. If the belt starts to slow down a little bit, it's not that big a deal. You're just going for a walk or a jog. In these, when you see like what Bo and Dario are doing, when you see Dario hopping on this thing at 28 miles an hour and he slams onto that thing and he comes on for full speed, the whole point to that kind of the jump-ons and that kind of part of that you're incorporating in your workout is that there is absolutely no hesitation. Zero hesitation. Whatever it hesitates, that affects the performance. In a normal jog, so what if you have a half a second delay in the reaction to the belt to your load? But when you're doing half a second in sports, it's a huge amount of time. So with it, we can control it. Well, what do? Well, under our hood, on all of our performance machines, there's a big motor, but there's also a second belt. Remember I said every motor then has one belt that runs to a front roller that drives it. In ours, there's 2 belts off our motor, one to the front roller, the other one to a 35-pound steel flywheel that's geared way up. And so that flywheel gets spinning at a very high rate of speed. When you're at the 12 mile an hour, it's 20 miles an hour. Think of it, it's like a 35-pound bowling ball coming at you at 6,500 RPM. And that thing just doesn't stop. You're not going to stop and grab that. It just drives right through it. It drives right through your point of impact. So as your heel starts to come down and you start to put your heel into that treadmill, there's no hesitation at all because you just don't generate enough force. I don't care how big a guy you are. You're not going to generate enough force to make this thing hesitate. So with it, and then it just keeps running at that same constant speed. Well, that was our patent. So that's what really started the whole company. When we got the patent for the force, what we call the force multiplier, we realized it opened us up into a huge area. It's why we have such broad speed ranges on something like this. Everybody, when you start looking at it, nobody does the kind of speed ranges we do because they can't handle it. Either, if you think about a car, you have to shift gears to get up into the higher speeds because the motor has a very narrow range it can work at. Well, in ours, because of the force multiplier, we can generate a lot of force at the very low speeds to keep it smooth. And then, of course, the motor's running at such a high speed at the high speeds, that's kind of covering it. So it allowed us to start doing more things, and that's where you started seeing some of these different things that we've done. These projects came in, because once people saw that we were doing things like that, it's what else can you integrate us into? And so the downside to us, our stuff is big, our stuff is heavy, if anybody's had to install it. We just did an install with Kyle Bracey, who will be in here later this afternoon. And the one neat thing about us is everybody kind of says this when they get when you get one of these, it's like, oh my gosh, I had no idea this is what I was going to get. This thing's huge. How am I going to get this off the truck? This is the stuff that we work with you ahead on to keep you in the loop and kind of keep this as part of it. But everything we do, if you see on it, we're big on all steel construction. We're really big on having something in there that'll take kind of the pounding and keeping us working with it. Because it is the reputations, it turns almost into a club. Like I said, with our mediocre advertising that we do, people get to know us because of word of mouth. And then all of a sudden they say, well, treadmills just don't hold up. Man, have you had a Tuff tread? They're going to hold up and they're going to keep up. But the usage of it is really the big part for us. And so if there's anything that you see in the machine that you want to take and I said not so much make a full custom machine on, but you would be surprised what we can do with these machines as you start to see what your workouts are going to be. And so that can kind of turn it into. Tuff Treads also, we're big on, when we say relationships, our entire company has always been built on the premise that it's a ministry that reaches out to the needy and to the help. That we have always done a lot with kids and child protective services. We bring them, we have a training program where they come in and come through the company so they can start to learn a skill. They don't have a mom and dad, maybe we can come in and expose them to them. Maybe we can spend the time so they get to see that kind of things. We've done a lot with our prison ministry about bringing people in and giving them a chance to get back on their feet. There's a lot of guys with huge, wonderful skill sets that got off track. And if you just can sit there and get them back into the routine of working when they get out of prison, you can start to make a difference in that. And that's how we kind of look at our whole company is, what are you willing to settle for? So many people are willing to settle for just one thing, just the financial stability. Your video on gym ownership and business about where you give a very realistic view about what it takes to be successful in a gym, it's one, I didn't know you, and I've been showing your video for probably, for quite a while. And because somebody calls up into our gym, into our company, hey, I'm opening a gym, I want to do these things, I got a video you probably should watch before you do this, because we know it. We know the people that really have an interest and can make it. We know the people that have a heart to work out in the gym, and then we know there's people out there that don't know how to run a business. And that's one of those things that you start to look at and say, well, am I going to lose business doing this? Yeah. But what I don't end up is there's no Tuff treads laying around that nobody's using. It kind of helps me, but it really does help me from the standpoint of, hey, when I find somebody, like when you called in and I said, you're our customer. You need what we need. Maybe we can also show you other areas you could use it and we could help you in. At our workplace, we can help people every day that we're working with. You guys in the gym business, doing what Donnie was doing, you can make such a huge difference in people and in their life and in dealing with them, because it's the people we get access to every day. The people that we get access to, that they only get to know, they get to know us because we're around them day after day after day. And so some of our guys, as we looked at, we decided we can do something with our people. We can utilize our shop. We can do things like this. When Bo started talking about this, Bo and Dari and I have been talking about so often about saying, man, I'm hearing about people getting help in this area, in this area. And all of a sudden it turns into what we all are doing. If some of you out there, when Eddie gets talking about the kids program, that was one of the things that we started seeing is there's so many kids nowadays who are just growing up on the games, on the video games, and they're not knowing how to move, how to run, how to walk. They are set up for a life of diabetes, no function. They are set up for a life that is limited. What am I limited to? What am I going to be limited to? Video games. What am I going to be limited to as a career? Probably something in computer programming. But what am I going to miss out on is the incredible body that we have and its ability to do amazing things. And if we can do that kind of stuff, that kind of amazing work, that's what we all do, and we shouldn't lose it. Every now and then I get around these people, and I get around, you get so inspired on hearing these things with the people that are doing, and you realize coaches, any of you guys who are coaches, we see it now. We're starting to really appreciate that coaches change young men's lives, young women's lives, and that they have that ability to do that. So if there's anything we can do, we're interested in all that kind of work. We're trying to say we're not going to settle just for something. You won't believe the stuff we're working on just to try and make our product better, and it holds up great right now. But it's just that we're driving, it's like, well, what do we want to settle for? We don't want to settle on those. This is something that represents us. Your guys' work is just great. And I didn't mean to get off on that, but it is one of those things that when I see you all out there, and I know some of y'all's stories from over the years, like Bo said, talking to people on phones and finally getting to meet them, and you don't realize how much we've been talking about you guys and about what you do, and how impressive what it is and what a difference it makes. So that's kind of it's driven us in the way we build a product. We kind of want to say we just don't want to settle for anything. And so is there any way that we can make it better? And is there any way we can use the resources that we've been given, just to make other people find out, reaching their potential and enjoy going to work each day? Not every day. I mean, I don't enjoy going to work every day. But there are days I get up and I love going to work. And there are days that I get through it, and at the end of the day, I'm so thankful I went to work that day. Oops. And I guess whacking my mic is my cue for me to go. So I'll leave it over. And this is also like Bo. This is our friend Eddie Enriquez.